An unsettling statistic had caught my attention about 7 days ago. The statistic read out that there had been more shootings to date than there have been days in the year. And it just didn't sit right with me. Now, I've been seeing a lot of people on social media talk about, let's take the guns away. And I'm not here to get too deep into the politics. I'm only 20 and I would sound really ignorant trying to do all that. But they're saying take the guns away and the mass shootings will stop. And in theory, that makes sense. But if we look to places like London, the UK, where they have outlawed all guns, all firearms, if you talk to some of the people who live in UK, typically most of the people who live in, London, the UK, they're still afraid of leaving their house. It may not be that they're going to get shot if they leave their house, but they're still scared of like literally getting stabbed and mugged to death outside of their own home in their own country. So the problem isn't what weapons these young men are choosing to use. The problem is the poor mental health of these young men who are choosing to harm other people or even harm themselves. And I believe that we're all just misidentifying the real problem, which is the men's mental health crisis. Men who are depressed with like poor mental health, are angry all the time, feeling trapped in their life and situation. These are the men that we need to help in order to kind of calm down the situation with all these tragedies happening in the news recently. Helping their mental health will better the problem, not taking the guns away. And don't click off this video because I'm talking about mental health and difficult shit, difficult topics. Most people have already clicked off the video, and don't be one of them, 50 to 60% of the people are, like literally cannot even handle the message that I'm trying to put out right now. So if you want to be like everybody else, go ahead and click off this video because I'm going to be speaking about some real shit. And if you're not like ready to hear it, then please like click off. So now that everybody who doesn't want to be here has clicked off, I'm not here to waste any of your time. In this video, we're going to talk about what all forms of depression look like, how it affects men and women differently, a time in my life when I was depressed, and wanting to die, not commit harm to like myself or commit harm to other people, but I really I wanted to die, not wake up the next day. How I did traditional therapy and I really fucking hated it. What alternative therapies I found to get myself out of that mental health rut, and then I'm gonna quickly tell you guys what is fucking your mental health up really quickly at the end of the video. So we're gonna go through all forms of depression, how it affects us differently. I'm gonna give you guys a quick story, a couple quick stories about when I was depressed and when I tried therapy, and what alternatives I found to help me, and what I'm doing, what I'm avoiding to also keep my mental health in check. So, and as somebody who has had shitty ass mental health and has sat through every single one of these drills since 2012, 2013, about since these mass shootings started getting more mainstream, I truly want to help this situation. So I'm not here to waste any of your guys' time. So if any of those things sound like something you could benefit from, please stick around to at least that part or the end of the video. And let's get right into this, okay? What does depression look like? Typically, when you think of depression, you think of sadness, that one person who's saying I don't feel like getting out of bed some days. I don't feel like doing this some days because of my depression. That may be one form of depression, but that was typically a depression that affects women more than it does men, We think of those sadnesses when we hear the word depression or even think about it. But depression could take on many different forms, and it affects us men and women differently, Typically, the women would be the ones to be I don't feel like getting out of bed some days. I don't feel like doing this some days. Men, we're affected differently. We could get agitated. We could get angry in our situation just because we feel trapped with our environment around us. That is a different way depression affects us, As men, we are more likely to get angry and try and do some action to try and fix our situation, the way that we're feeling. Men are creatures of action. Men are creatures of action, which is why we really typically don't like traditional therapy. So I'm gonna bring you guys back to a point in my life, high school, when I had really shitty mental health, and I even had a therapist prescribed to me from my high school, and I had to see this motherfucker 2 times a week, and I fucking hated it. So back to a point in my life, freshman year. During that point in time, up into going into freshman year, I had no friends. I went to a really small school with like 8 students, and I saw those 8 students every year until I graduated. So I literally hung around the same 8 kids for my whole life. I had no friends. Spent most of my life playing video games and indulging in instant gratification. So things such as like porn, video games, social media, just all types of bad stuff for your mental health. So I went into high school having shitty mental health. My parents are pressuring me to go to college, which is something I really don't want to do. But because like I have all the good grades, I have all the scholarships, my parents are like, you're going to college, this is what you're doing. I really don't want to do that, and eventually my grades start slipping. I start having confrontations with my parents. The friends that I did get into high school with, about 2 of the 5 of the people that I hung out most with were people who I call solid. Everybody else was like snakes, fake ass motherfuckers, more focused on like partying, doing drugs, and just being horrible people to the people that were around us. So I didn't have a good support system around me either. So I had no friends. Basically, parents were like starting to have issues with me. And then in my junior year, I got kicked out of my father's house. After I got kicked out of my father's house, I started having issues like with my friends. So started having issues with my friends. And then on top of that, to make it all worse, the girls that I were talking to in junior year also started giving me issues. So life was hitting me pretty hard at once. And I remember telling my dad like one time, like when he kicked me out, I was like, well, what if you find me like on the side of the street dead? I was like, that would honestly be a better alternative to everything going around. Like you could find me on the side of the street dead, or like sometimes when I was walking home from school, when my parents were pushing college on me, I would walk home knowing that I was about to go home to have no friends, and I would think like if one of these cars that are driving on the street, if they just like kind of swerved over to the sidewalk and hit me, I would be content with the situation. Like I said earlier, I wanted to die but not commit harm to myself, but like I would think about like death and how much more content I would be with that outcome than, living. So traditional therapy. During that junior year of my high school, getting kicked out of my parents, having tons of issues with like friends, girls. Also, my academics are like struggling, flunking basically. I get to a point where I'm looking just for help. So I find out that our school has like therapists in there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get one of these therapists to try. I feel really depressed. I honestly feel like dying. I have no other options. So I went to the therapist, and this is why men do not like therapy. And Andrew Tate even said it best himself. He said, if I have to sit in a room with somebody else and talk about how shitty my life is for multiple hours and then get prescribed mind altering drugs right after, I would kill myself too. And men aren't typically designed to want to sit down and talk about their feelings for hours. That's why when you kind of hear like the word men in therapy, you kind of like, a lot of dudes would joke about it. You're like, oh, you're a pussy going to fucking therapy. That form of therapy was not designed for men. If you look at how the therapy was designed, it was more like designed for you to help women. Men have different forms of therapy. There are other forms of therapy that men could do to better their mental health. That doesn't involve, going and talking to some dude or woman for like multiple hours and having them just listen to you so you could spew out all your feelings, and then everything will magically be better now that you've talked about it. Men are creatures of action. We need to perform an action and then see a result that is going to cure depression. If we're depressed, we want to do something and then see something change, and that's how we will fix our depression. We know talking about it and spewing out our emotions is not going to fix any problem that we have in our life. So that's why we don't like to do therapy. Sorry, I was speaking a little fast there. During that point in my high school career, when I wanted to die, the few forms of therapy that I had that were keeping me sane that I could talk about right here are nature and having a male brother / best friend. So I had those 2 people that were solid enough to not be fake snakes and like try to do everything for their own personal gain. I could cry in front of those 2 people and not get called gay. So that was kind of like my support system. If anything was going on, like when I got kicked out of my parents, I would go to that one homie and like 1 or 2 homies and kind of just like cry or talk it out with them. And having a male best friend who could listen to you, not call you gay, but then also be like, well, how are we going to fix this? What can we do to like go forward? You're just having that energy of another masculine man helping you fix a problem. That's a good support for like any man going through a mental health issue. And a lot of days we're surrounded by a lot of fake people. So it's hard to tell if you have that support in your life, but if you have that one solid friend who could listen to you vent about anything, and if you do, you know what I'm talking about. That's the most like strongest support system you can have. But during that point in high school, one other thing that was keeping my sanity in check was I could have very easily hopped on the bus after school and been home in like 10 minutes. But I would instead walk to my friend's house and talk with him. And then after walking all the way to his house, I would walk all the way back home. And it would take like 40, 50 minutes instead of like a 10-minute bus ride. So those walks in nature really kept my mind straight. And like I said, even though sometimes when I walk by the street and be like, that car could go ahead and hit me, I really wouldn't give a fuck. I would look forward to those walks home every day because, you know, I had the sun shining on me. I could look at the trees. I'd walk past a lake on my way home. Just being in nature is a form of therapy for men. So those are two forms that I've used personally that have helped me. Another form is music. Having music on my walks home has also really helped. And music is a form of therapy. So music, nature walks, and, you know, just being in sunlight and all that, good for your mental health. Having a male best friend who you could talk to and like get the real shit figured out is going to help you tremendously with your mental health, so you don't have to be anxious about everything. I've spoke about this on my channel before about how I was kind of overweight my freshman year. That was also really bad for my mental health. So one thing that did help me get my mental health in check was just working out. It didn't matter if it was like high intensity workouts that I did at home, my calisthenics that I did at home, me doing the swim team, me playing lacrosse, me joining weightlifting, you know, like whatever it is, as long as it was a physical activity that was bettering my physique, it bettered my mental health. Because like once I actually got the six pack and like I got shredded, I just felt like I walked and felt like a lot better about my life. So another couple forms of therapy for men, you know, if you don't have that male best friend, you could journal it out. I've said that on this channel, you know. You got Hamza, who speaks about journaling all the time, and meditation. Those are forms of therapy for men. Another form of therapy for men that I've seen help one of my close friends is working with your hands. So I knew a close friend of mine who lived a really, really troubled young life. He kicked out at the age of 14, basically had to go stay at a friend's house in the projects throughout his whole teenage life, gang banging, selling drugs, doing everything, right? He would have violent outbursts, like, a lot, you know, just like somebody says something that like fucking rubbed him the wrong way. He would like get mad, turn around, you know, sorry. He'd get mad, punch a hole in the wall, you know, fight somebody, do all that types of shit. Recently, as I've been seeing him grow up, and like even when he came to stay a couple of nights at my house, one way I would watch him keep his like mental in check whenever some bad shit would happen or was going on in his life was he would always keep RC cars around him. And what he would do at nighttime is take these RC, like 3, 4, 5 RC cars apart and then custom make his own car. Like do the frame, after he gets the frame made, hook up some lights and shit. Like he was customizing Walmart RC cars and shit. And working with your hands or having like a craft like that to like work on RC cars or work on bikes, it literally stopped him from gang banging. He has his own house now. He has no holes in his wall. But like from the past when I knew him from when he was like 16, 17, this motherfucker, like if he's like, even I had to watch what I said around him. I was like, yeah, he'd fight me. But like him being able to work on those cars at night and then, you know, sometimes bikes, that literally kept his mental in check so that he didn't have to rage out, punch the wall. You know, whenever somebody said some shit that like upset him, I'd see him like grab his car sometimes, you know, start working on him like out of his backpack, you know, take the screwdriver, start fucking with it and shit. And like he quit talking to everybody and just focus in on fucking with the car. And that's another form of therapy that a lot of us don't have anymore. You know, they took woodshop away from like a lot of high schools. I did woodshop for like for a month, bro. Like I made a wooden pen and then they took that away. Like, remember woodshop? That's working with your hands. That's literally one of the best forms of fucking therapy in the world. Like, if you guys ever watched Breaking Bad, but remember when Jesse, he was the younger dealer in Breaking Bad, but when he got kidnapped by the like hillbillies and shit, and he was like chained up underneath the fucking I don't even know what to call it. He gets thrown into like this fucking manhole in the ground that's made out of cement. He's like locked in. They has a bunch of hillbillies fucking watching him and shit. And he's like, okay, you have to cook our drugs. And then after you cook our drugs, you go back in the hole, you sit there. And then once you're done sitting there, you come back up, you cook our drugs. And that was Jesse's life. He was thinking back to the time when he was like in wood shop, and even though he was sitting there in the lab, you know, cooking drugs and shit, and like he's under a lot of pressure, he's got motherfuckers with guns watching him, telling him that they're gonna kill him and shit. He was thinking back to the time where he was in wood shop making a box for his mother, and thinking about working with his hands in wood shop and wood class back when he was in high school is what kept him sane throughout that fucked up part of the show. But there are other forms of therapy for us men that doesn't involve going and talking to somebody for like multiple fucking hours of our day. You could go walk in nature. You could go talk to your male best friend. You could go work out. You could go join boxing. You know, if you have aggression, bro, box, bro. Fucking take your aggression out on somebody else. You could work with your hands, you could journal, you can meditate, you know? And things like this are stuff that a lot of men don't do. And I believe that's why the mental health crisis is worsening. And on top of that, you know, things that are fucking your mental health. Social media, porn, drugs, no social connections, you know, everything. Like, if you look at what kids are doing nowadays, Snapchat most of the time, TikTok most of the time. Most fucking young ass high schoolers these days are doing hard drugs, not even smoking weed. They're doing hard, like hardcore drugs. Relationships are out of control. Like, I remember when I was in high school, there were motherfuckers with body counts in like the 20s, and it's all like, the world's just getting so desensitized and shit. And we're wondering like why the world's basically getting so desensitized. And we're wondering, like, why are all these mass tragedies happening? And then we think, oh, let's take the weapons away from these men, and then we won't have no more tragedies. When in fact, like, these are distressed young men who will find a way around the way that they feel. If they feel like harming someone, taking away the weapon is not going to make them not harm someone. Fixing their mindset is going to stop them from harming someone. You know, if you take the gun away, they're just going to find something else if they truly, like, want to do it. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now, you know? Growing up and seeing all the crazy shit happen around in this country, I kind of disconnected myself from it for a while. I quit watching TV, didn't check in on the news, and honestly, my life was better for a while, even though the problem around us was still worsening. And it made me realize ignoring the problem doesn't solve it. So that's why I decided to go ahead and speak on it on this video, even though like I'm really uneducated, I'm only 20, but the men's mental health crisis is something that's not getting better, unfortunately, and we need to do something about it. So if you or somebody else that you know is like feeling that way, let them know what the other forms of therapy are. Let them know that you be that male best friend for them, or find one for yourself. And, you know, just don't let your emotions like get out of control. You know, if you see yourself getting aggressive with even inanimate objects like I have in the past, realize that you need to make a change, or else it's going to push past the point where you start snapping on motherfuckers. You start fighting niggas, or then like you get to that point where you like want to actually harm other people because of your own poor mental health, or like even yourself. And that's the point where most people where we need to stop people from getting, you know? So let's work on just supporting each other as human beings. And yeah, it's just support each other as human beings. You know, we're all in this together. You know, we're all on the same fucking planet and shit. But other than that, guys, this video is a bit long. Not many people are going to see the message. Like I said at the beginning of the video, 50% of people already clicked off in the first 40 seconds. So if you made it all the way to this part of the video, it means that you truly care about the situation. And yeah, it's just a really fucking difficult situation to even keep talking about. But I hope you guys just do something productive today. If you got to worry about your mental health, worry about your money, worry about whatever, so get that shit done. All right, guys? I'll catch you guys up later in the next video. Peace out.